axis, this wobbling cycle, that it ends at a certain time, which is the end of the Mayan calendar, the year 2012, and that it ushers in a golden age. Now, in my work, and it's extensively documented in the book, I have gone through the entire solar system and showed how the planets are all experiencing climate change just like the Earth. This appears to be the literal fulfillment of the 2012 prophecies. And in the book, I also argue, and we'll do that throughout the rest of this weekend, that the galaxy is pushing us into this new energy zone, that the solar system is actually colliding with a cloud of energy that has a higher, I hate to use the term, but vibrational frequency. It's a higher density of energy in the source field. And that higher density is speeding up the vibration of atoms and molecules on Earth. It's making everything rev up and go faster and faster. Well, sure enough, if you actually go back through the fossil record, we find that there is a 25,000-year cycle in human evolution. 50,000 years ago, more or less, everybody on Earth suddenly started to use tools that were not just for survival, but had ritual purposes for making art and for religion and spirituality. 50,000 years ago, boom, everybody gets this upgrade, and they start doing that. 25,000 years ago, all of a sudden the Neanderthals die out worldwide. And we also have at the same time a dying out of all these large creatures like the saber-toothed tiger and the woolly mammoth that were threatening to human life. Now we're at the end of another cycle once again, and we're seeing Dr. John Hawkes, a University of Wisconsin anthropologist, showing us that in the last 5,000 years, human DNA has evolved 100 times faster than ever before in history, to the point that the DNA molecule is now 7% different on a molecular level than it was 5,000 years ago. So I believe that this will be a shift in space, time, matter, energy, and biology as we know it. I lay out all the clues for that in this book, and throughout the rest of this weekend, those of you who are lucky enough to be here, you're going to hear the whole thing. Hundreds and hundreds more slides coming. This is just an introduction. All of this with the interplanetary climate change and the measurable DNA change that's happening now, that also happened 25,000 years ago, that also happened 50,000 years ago. This is the smoking gun. The gods knew what they were talking about. That wobble in the Earth's axis doesn't appear to be happening randomly. It appears to be the result of a force field that is pushing its way through. And as the Earth is actually pushing through the field, it exerts torque on the Earth's axis. And the field, whatever the structure of energy is the Earth is moving through, it takes the Earth 25,920 years to move through that energy, which I'm going to argue is geometric in nature. That energetic geometry takes 25,000 years, 920 at the end, 25,920 years to move our way through. And then this energy shift occurs. The founding fathers appear to know everything about this. Now, if you want to know what's really going on with the so-called Illuminati, and why these people are so interested in preserving their bloodlines, why there's a royal succession right of kings, it's because those people with the funny heads, they didn't disappear. They've been here and they've interbred more and more, and they look enough like us that you don't see the difference. In fact, 15% of everybody on Earth, in all different races, regardless of whether it's Asian, African, whatever, 15% of everybody has measurable extraterrestrial DNA. That's one of the things I heard from these guys on the inside who work in these black projects. So it's not like it's only this selective group, but they still want to preserve that magical power that they had in that other form, when they were in this godlike form. That's what they trace themselves to. If you get to the highest levels on the inside, they laugh at you. You've seen these images of Egyptian gods so many times, but because you're not conditioned to think that extraterrestrials could look just like you and me, you don't notice the differences. You don't notice the narrow rib cage. You don't notice the funny waist with the little pot belly. You don't notice the elongated skull. You don't think about the fact that those skulls have actually been found, that humans could evolve on other planets from a galactic quantum template that literally takes Luc Montagnier's test tube with water in it and turns that water into DNA, or takes Pacheco's test tube with water in it and a little sand that's been sterilized, and you get these little microorganisms growing. I'm saying that's going to happen on any planet, and it's going to spiral its way into humanity. And human beings can get to a much higher level of evolution than what we're at right now here on earth. And I believe the founding fathers inherited this prophecy directly from these gods who then, over time, just blended in with the population. So let's look at some interesting things about the Great Seal. First of all, at the top, it says annuit septus. Anu, the word root of anu is year, like annual. Septus is conception, it's born. So it means the year is born. But in this case, the precession, the 25,920-year cycle, is also called the Great Year. And circumstantial evidence, which is very strong, and I'm going to show you all that evidence, shows that that's the year they're talking about being born. It's the end of the cycle. And of course, the pineal gland, the symbolism of the pineal gland being awakened, the pyramid factors in very prominently, which ties it into ancient Egypt, ancient civilizations. The gods built the pyramid, these people with the large heads. And what the heck is going on at the bottom with Novus Ordo Seclorum? Well, this brings us to the writing of Charles A.L. Totten. Now, here he is as a younger man, and he was in the military. You can see him there in full military regalia in the Civil War. And then here he is later in life. Now, it seems pretty clear that this guy was a highly initiated Freemason. I haven't done that research, but I absolutely believe he's got to be 33rd degree. In 1882, he had already become, by that point, a first lieutenant in the 4th Artillery of the U.S. Army, and he wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Treasury, Charles Folger, on February 10th, 1882. And here's what he said. This is a direct quote from Charles Totten. Novus Ordo Seclorum is a quotation from Virgil's 4th eclogue. I put the word Virgil's in there because that's what he means. That's what everybody knows eclogues are back in those days. And was borrowed in turn by Virgil from the mystic Sibylline records. The Sibylline records were actually channeled texts held as the highest and most heavily guarded treasure in Roman history because they were so accurate. They predicted Constantine by name 800 years before he showed up, predicted Hannibal by name. All these different disasters and events that happened in Roman history were in those texts, and they go right through to the end of the entire age, which is obviously happening now in our time. Now here in Charles Totten's letter of where Novus Ordo Seclorum came from, he actually quotes the original passage. Now this is what the founding fathers were using. The guy's name was Thompson, who actually did this quote in the first place. This is what they were using when they made that symbol on the dollar. This is what they excerpted it from. A mighty order of ages, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a mighty order of ages is born anew, novus, new. Well, the order of ages would be the precessional cycle. And there's, again, plenty of other evidence that that's what they're talking about if you read the whole thing. Both the prophetic virgin and Saturnian kingdoms now return. Well, what would a Saturn kingdom be? Humans that didn't originate on Earth, gods, coming from outer space. Now, it says, a new progeny, that means an offspring, a birth, a new type of birth, a new type of human. Now a new progeny is let down from the lofty heavens. The boy soon to be born, in whom the Iron Age shall come to an end, and the Golden One shall arise again in the whole earth. That is mind-blowing. How many people knew, well, don't raise your hand because you've all read my website, probably some of you know, but how many people knew that that was on the dollar, that that's actually what it was quoted from? It's unbelievable. But Totten's letter doesn't quote the whole thing. There's other stuff that's in that same passage. Here it is. Whatso tracks remain of our old wickedness, once done away, shall free the earth from never ceasing fear. That sounds pretty good. He shall receive the life of gods and see heroes with gods commingling, and himself be seen of them. This is disclosure. And not just the government telling you that UFOs are real, that humans are in the ships, but the UFOs actually showing up at the end of the age, which is written into all these other prophetic traditions we can talk about, including ones that are modern. And with his Father's worth, reign o'er a world at peace. Now, I believe this has gotten horribly distorted by the so-called Illuminati. I believe the original prophecy was positive. It will remain positive. It's written into Christianity. It's written into Islam with the prophecy of the Mahdi, which is their own Messiah. It's written into Hinduism. They're looking for the return of Krishna, and Kalki. Every ancient prophecy, as we said, with this tradition, they talk about the coming golden age. And it's all hidden in the myths with the corn mill and all this stuff. It's in every tradition worldwide. This is the core of the prophecy. The gods return, heroes and gods commingling, humans on earth commingling with the gods, and we receive the life of gods. We become the golden one that arises in the whole earth. Humanity itself is transformed into some other form. Now, a lot of people laugh when I show them this, but after George Washington died, they drew him in an ascended state over and over again. They drew him becoming one of the gods. Here's the little angels putting a wreath on his head as he becomes an ascended being. Here he is as an embodiment of Zeus, holding Zeus's sword, and in that godly position, the finger going up represents him tapping into the pineal gland. Now, here's another image of George Washington's ascension. In fact, I believe that's what I forget the exact name of this. This is out of Manly Palmer Hall's book. But another thing that's crazy that people don't realize is if you look down here, there's this god on the throne with the golden eagle representing the phoenix above him, and he's twice the height of all the other people in the room. Oh, well, that can't mean anything. That's just got to be a perspective difference. No, it's not. This is, again, showing you the gods. George Washington ascended up with the gods. And here's Lincoln. George Washington literally brings Lincoln up, and Lincoln also was believed to have ascended when he got to the end of his life. And so Washington puts the wreath on his head, which means he's now an ascended god. So they actually believed that the founding fathers didn't have to reincarnate again, that they automatically go into the golden age and the ascended state as this happens. Just to cement the point home, and this is the last thing that our video is going to end on, here we have the inside of the U.S. Capitol Dome. It's the most famous thing you see in America other than the Statue of Liberty or the Washington Monument. It's that big dome with the steeple on top. But if you go inside the dome and you look up, you see a painting in there, and this is the wide view of it, and it's called The Apotheosis of George Washington, and it's openly titled that. What does apotheosis mean? Man becomes God. And here, as you can see, George Washington is posing with all of the gods. They all have their little regalia. These are human extraterrestrials that came to the earth. They're being depicted here. He's now among them. And they show him sitting on a rainbow, which clearly indicates, if the gods weren't enough, that he has now ascended, because there are many illustrations of Jesus after his ascension also showing him sitting on a rainbow, indicating he's now in an ascended state. And if you go over to the Tibetan traditions, there are many, many illustrations of the rainbow body, which literally means that as you ascend and your body dematerializes, you start to get all these wonderful rainbow colors that are visible around you. That's the rainbow body state. Now, here's something else that's very interesting. You see those little circles around the ring? There's a total of 72 of those circles. And of course, the Earth's precession moves by 1 degree every 72 years. If you add up 72 times 360, that gives you your precessional cycle, the whole cycle of 25,920 years. Now, inside each of those little circles is a 5-pointed star. And if you look really closely, there's a pine cone after every second ring. After every second circle is a little bitty pine cone mounted there, again showing the pineal gland symbolism. But let's look at those stars. There's 5 pointed stars, and there's 72 of them. You add that up, it's a total of 360 points. Now, if you take that 360 points, the total number of points, and then you multiply it again by the number of stars, which is 72, you come out with 25,920. This is one of the ways in which it is clear that the Founding Fathers wanted to encode this information about the precession into that illustration of what's going on around George Washington when he reaches apotheosis and he becomes a god. William Henry has talked extensively about this. This is really his domain. So I want to give him full credit for that. His website is williamhenry.net. We've spoken together a bunch of times. He does a lot more on this than I'm going into now. Next, I want you to look at the side area below the tall windows. You'll see on the right-hand side a frieze, as it's called, F-R-I-E-Z-E. It's a long illustration of various events in American history that's around the dome. And there's various examples, when the settlers came with the American Indians. But here's the one that I'm the most interested in. This is the moment where Cortez met Montezuma. And of course, as you look closely, you see Montezuma he's got the same interesting position of the gods. His hand is aimed at this fire that has a serpent in it. The serpent, again, it represents the pineal gland, the fire of the pineal gland, the awakening. The serpent is the uraeus, that kundalini energy coming up. But notice what's behind Montezuma in this image. It's the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar that ends in 2012, inside the Capitol Dome. Just to make sure that you got the point. Apotheosis, 2012, the third eye, the sigil on the back of the dollar bill. They wanted you to know this. They quoted Novus Ordo Seclorum saying that people will become gods. Why do you think the gods know that this is what's going to happen? Because they know about this cycle. They've seen it happen before. They're really excited about it, and they're going to be coming back very soon. That's what all this UFO stuff is about. And last but not least, we see what appears to be a code hidden in the pyramid. If you take the date 1776 at the bottom, and then you look at the Mayan calendar cycle, one of the basic Mayan cycles is called a Katun. It's 19.7 years long. You begin that Katun in 1756, and sure enough, one of the Katuns ends very close to the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. So if you can consider that the Mayan Katun might be symbolized by these 13 courses, then 1756 would be the beginning of all these precursor events that they did to directly lead to America being founded. It didn't just start out of nowhere in 1776. It took this big 20-year process to build up to the Boston Tea Party and all these things they did. Well, you count 13 courses and you end up at the top in the year 2012, which is when the cycle ends and the pineal gland opens up. The year is born, Anu et Septis, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of ages is born. The gods come back. We receive the life of gods and are seen together with them. The golden one arises again in the whole earth. Now, in case anybody knocks me and says, well, 13 Katuns doesn't mean anything. The Mayan Katun, 13 means nothing. Not true. Spanish conquistadors, when they went to Central America, they saw that everybody at that time was using a 13 Katun system to count time. And this is an actual illustration sketched by the Spanish of that counting system of 13 Katuns. So it was very widely known. And there's your Templar cross up at the top, one of the symbols of the Illuminati. So they got this information a long time ago. They got really excited. And I believe that part of the timing of the Declaration of Independence was to be on that dividing line of 1776, which also Kabbalistically is 888 plus 888, which is another symbolism of the duality of positive and negative that makes the universe. So, look, it's all been laid out for you here. You look back on what I've said about the source field. We're seeing that there is a whole lot of science that we don't now possess. Information that leads to the understanding that we are sharing a consciousness with each other. Scientific discoveries are happening in different places around the world, and we tap into each other's minds. DNA is emerging directly out of the source field to create human life. One species in Garyev's research, the frog eggs were zapped and transformed into the salamander eggs. There is a provable 25,000-year cycle in human evolution. 50,000 years ago, boom, we start using all these tools for spiritual purposes and for art for the first time. We become a lot more interesting to hang out with, for the gods, probably. 25,000 years ago, the Neanderthals all die out, the big bad creatures all die out, the saber-toothed tigers, the woolly mammoths, the ones that threaten human life, boom, they're gone. And now we're seeing the DNA molecule becoming 7% different. The rate of evolution has increased by 100 times faster in the last 5,000 years. Provable microbiological evidence that we're changing. We can prove that the solar system is transforming, that climate change is not just an effect on Earth, it's happening throughout the solar system. So when Garyev transformed those salamander eggs with light and captured that genetic code on the photons, zapped it into the frog eggs, I believe that's what's happening to us right now. We're moving into this new energy zone. It's activating the planets, it's heating them up, it's making the molecules actually move faster. but it's also increasing the source field vibration, which is making us become more intelligent. And the Flynn effect proves that. IQ scores have been going up 3 points per decade for over a century. It's another provable fact that's in the book. The Founding Fathers definitely knew about this. They wrote it everywhere they could. It's in the Capitol Dome, the apotheosis of George Washington. They drew him in an ascended form, sitting with the gods on a rainbow. They drew the Mayan calendar on the side. They put the 25,920 points, if you multiply the points in those stars by 72. Then they have it on the Great Seal of the United States, the awakened pineal gland, the pyramid with 13 courses. If 1776 represents the end of the first cycle, 2012 would be the end. So here we are at this unique juncture in our time. We have UFOs showing up more and more in our skies. I have extensively documented on my website, divinecosmos.com, this ongoing saga of disclosure, which appears to be building up to something. There's all these articles coming out about UFOs, UFOs, UFOs in the mainstream media. I don't think we're going to stay ignorant. I don't think this is going to remain mysterious. I believe that we are going through a galactic transmutation of what it means to be human. I believe that most of the people who are visiting us are good. They founded Christianity. They founded all the major world religions. They worked behind the scenes to give us what we needed to evolve, to become more loving people, to be more attuned with the source field, so that our pineal glands can awaken and we can be ready to become those light body people who are predicted to come here at this time of the end of the age. Everybody who watches my videos says, I've seen all your videos. And then I say, did you read my last article on the website? And then they go, you have a website? divinecosmos.com. Once or twice every month, at least twice a month, I write a new article. So part of what you need to do when you watch this video is don't stop here. Go back to my website, divinecosmos.com, look it up, read all this stuff. This is just a tiny portion of what I've done. Yes, you have to buy the book. It's only $30 retail. You can get it for like $18 on Amazon. It's totally awesome. This is just an eyedropper of what's in there. I want to thank you for watching this, and I want to thank you all for being here. I'm David Wilcock. See you in 2013. Thank you very much.